Good afternoon, everybody. I don't know, there are signs over there. I'll get Travis our sign. We'll go ahead and call this Planning Commission meeting to order. I'm Chairperson, Mayor Zach Ruink. Tim, you want to introduce yourself?
Tim Burkhauser, committee member.
Kelly Rosecrans, commission member.
Scott Keller, Alden.
Todd Furkey, commission member.
Shane?
Shane Burkhart, commission member.
Joe Terry, Director of Public Works.
Adam Tagan, Planning and Economic Development Director.
And members of the public?
Terry Wolf 2, Terry Wolf Building.
And Weldon.
Marlene Truman Weldon. Cindy Schlichting.
Al Schlichting.
Jim Stack.
Mike Zerflu.
Troy Mazza, Quick Trip.
Probably sit tall.
Terry Dolan, Alderperson. Joe Bachman, Wisconsin Rapid City Times.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Item number 1 on our agenda is the approval of the reports from the May 2nd and May 16th Planning Commission meetings. Commissioners, what are your wishes regarding those reports?
Move to approve.
The motion to approve by Burkhauser, is there a second? Second by Furkey. Any discussion on the reports? Seeing none, moving to a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Moving to item number 2, maps and plats received. No maps or plats were received. Item 3 is action on Plan 160206 Quick Trip Incorporated. The rezoning from M1 to B2 on parcel 3407914. Please note this item was sent back by the City Council at their May 17th meeting. Previously, the Commission had approved their request 6-0. I'll just make some general comments on the subsequent items there that are related to the request. We did hold our public hearing at our last meeting, so the purpose tonight is to not hold another public hearing, or if it were indicated as desired by the council, it would be back on our agenda as a public hearing. I would say that there's been a number of discussions and staff time and my time devoted to this project to really understand further what conditions might be considered by this commission as recommended by the council, or concerns from the public that can be imposed to the conditional use permit. Because the development is permitted on this site via the zoning generally, aside from the one rezoning that has to occur, or the 2 rezonings here, it is a permitted use via a conditional use. So the ability for us or for the city council to deny the development or deny it to issue a conditional use is rather limited. And so I would just make those general comments. We don't have a full group of members of the public here, but so I'm not expecting a lot of debate or need to discuss. But Adam, do you want to carry forth any further comments of the sort?
Certainly, as the mayor alluded to, this is a use that is specifically listed within your zoning ordinance as a conditional use, generally speaking. And this is very generally speaking, a conditional use is a use that's allowed in the district subject to conditions, meaning that it is a use that if not developed properly could have a negative impact. And the whole process of why there's a public hearing and the ability to put conditions on it is so that you can address those concerns. That being said, the conditions are intended so that as you're going through that, they are put on as conditions of approval prior to the development taking place, meaning that if there is something that is open-ended, that you don't necessarily have the answer up prior to approval, but that answer has to be gotten before any permits can be issued. So an example in this situation would be, for example, the traffic impact analysis. We know traffic is a concern. There's a requirement in there for that traffic impact analysis to be complete and engineering to make a recommendation on improvements, but that doesn't have to be done prior to the conditional use. Traditionally, it would just be a condition of approval that has to be addressed, again, prior to the development actually breaking ground and taking place. So that it's not, even by the city council approving the conditional use, that isn't a guarantee that the project moves forward, because they still have to meet all those conditions prior to that project actually taking place. So just wanted to clarify that a little bit more on why it's a conditional use and I guess the process a little bit. So.
Okay, so it's back on our agenda as far as further action. I guess as far as a process question I didn't ask prior to the meeting, Adam, do we need to act a second time on the items on our agenda?
I think just from a cleanliness standpoint, it makes sense that there be some action to send it back to the council, however that may be, whether it's a positive recommendation, whether it's exactly the same as previously, whether you want to amend your previous recommendation based on any information that may take place here. Although, as the mayor noted, it isn't a public hearing, so technically speaking, a public hearing is where all the information should be gathered and your recommendation should be based on the public hearing and what occurred there. Obviously, Quick Trip has taken the time to go through and put together a revised site plan. It's up on the Mondo pad, it's the color one that's before you, and within your packets, it was also, all those plans have been revised based on all the conditions that came out of this commission last month. So, in their letter, they actually go through all those conditions and note how it's been revised or how it's been addressed. So, they did take that time and effort to make sure that you could, I guess, graphically see what the commission was asking for, so that if it's not exactly what you expected, there's that ability to tweak that a little bit further as well.
And I do want to thank the applicant again for continuing to pursue the project. I know there's a go, no-go opportunity with every decision that's made, and I know it was a lot of time and expense, further expense, to continue to do and spend time on a project that maybe was sent back in return. So I just want to make that comment of appreciation. So, Commissioners, the first two items are action on the plan, and the third one is the action on the conditional use in our order of sort of occurrence tonight. So with that, I guess I'd entertain a motion or action.
Can I ask a question first? I guess I would like to know why the council sent it back to us, number one. And if they sent it back to us, did they send it back to us with a reason or what they wanted to see? Because otherwise, I kind of feel if they're not giving us any reason why it was sent back to us, I feel like we're spinning our wheels, and I feel like the buck was pushed back to us instead of a decision being made. So I guess I'm just curious why it got sent back to us.
This is one of the few items I think the city council has given us a reason why they've denied or sent something back. So I've got the requester at the table, and I'm going to ask Mr. Kellogg to
I'm the one
suggest
that-
why maybe he made the motion, since, right, you made the recommendation, I think, by yourself.
Yeah, I requested go back. And I said I was in favor of a quick trip concept. But I felt there were some things that I wanted the quick trip to revisit, to maybe ameliorate some of the problems that some of the neighbors might have had. And here's one, for example. I thought this is one particular I had, where the exit is across from Dewey. And so the hospital expands, you get more people coming up Dewey, and you got someone coming into the quick trip and someone going out. And so what happens, you have from 4 to 6, if you have more and more people coming from the hospital, and you have people leaving that one exit on Lincoln, you're gonna have people wanting to go across down Dewey, make a left on Lincoln, make a right on Lincoln, or you have people coming up Dewey, wanting to cross, there's no lights there, wanting to cross into Quick Trip, make a right on Lincoln or make a left. And so one thought I had, and I just said it at the council, maybe they have to have the cars coming up Dewey eventually if Riverview, this is just me speaking, if Riverview gets large enough and more employment, maybe at Hill, which is just east of the hospital, have the cars go over to Chestnut, come up Chestnut in front of Assumption, and there they can make left and rights on Lincoln and go up to 108th and make left and rights. So that's one that I threw out as that exit. Then there was in the packet, it said, I'm thirsty. The fence would be between 6 and 8 feet high. Well, is it gonna be 6 feet high or 8 feet high? And that's a noise factor, the noise pollution there. So I said, well, what is it? And I suggested one of the persons that lived there, Ben Chesney, stated that a 6-foot fence in his mind wouldn't be adequate. And I said, well, if it's 6 or 8, why don't we go for 8? But it wasn't in there either. It was just one or the other maybe. So that's one. That's the second reason. Third reason I thought was you have cars that are lining up on the north end of the Quick Trip, and you probably have 2 lanes there going into the car wash, which is at the east end, and that's a 2-stall car wash. And so you're going to have cars lining up there during the day, and I really liked, and first of all, I respect that all the conditions that were made with regard to times and lights and all those things. But you have cars lined up and loud boom boxes going on in some cases, or you have noise. So all these homes that are adjacent there during the day are going to have that noise factor, that noise pollution. So I don't know of solutions, okay? I'm just saying, maybe if they didn't have the car wash located there, they had it located maybe at the east end of the proposed thing, you wouldn't have those cars lined up there that would cause problems for those neighbors. But that's an engineer, people having to decide what to do. That's like a fourth reason. I thought too, you have the Quick Trip actually facing Lincoln in what I see. And you go past most of the Quick Trips, they face the main road, which would be in a way the expressway. Because if you look at all the others. So you have these cars coming up to get gas, they move ahead, and they go into Quick Trip, and you get the locking of the car doors, and they go beep, as we all do. Well, that's 24/7. And so I'm just saying, could they spin the Quick Trip building? If you move the car wash to the east end and you turn the Quick Trip building facing the expressway, and then have the stalls in front, and that way you could, let me see, probably show you up on the thing.
Just don't actually touch it.
Okay.
It should be okay, it's just a peanut.
If you move this over here, that's the car wash. And then you wouldn't have to have the 2 lanes of noise for these people, and gas and all that other. And he took and this building, the front of it's facing there. And then these people getting out, trying to get something inside, they lock their car, all that noise, that's 24/7. And I'm just thinking of these people. No one, So then why can't this be spun and then moved back a bit? And because you don't need this back here, because you don't have the cars going per se that way. And you could have the front of it here, and the lights and marketing, you'd have the front of the Quick Trip where you get the most of the traffic, which you have on all the other Quick Trips. And so that would be advantageous. And it just seems to me that and then the 8-foot fence, maybe moving this someplace else, and moving that back, or even moving the car wash here. And then having this back, I designed something where you could have your parking here. It's really cursory. So, you got your fancy. Here, you can be my easel.
Been away.
Okay. Well, let me see. Yeah, the story. So, yeah.
Could you show a little more leg?
I apologize for this, but it shows you what I had in mind. So I kind of explained. He took the street out of the roadway out of here so you can move it back, turn the building facing this way, put the parking in this area, having the lighting in this area, you can see it would be more attractive to people coming to, you get more marketing. And people getting gas, the car wash would be down here. People getting gas could go and get gas, come around. They could actually leave this way and have this as the exit rather than down here. But if they want to get gas, and they could come around this, you could have the gas lane going this way, and you could even have a stagger so they come out more single file and just have one going around. But it's just a way of looking at it different. Now, this is beautiful, the design, but does it really meet the needs of these people as much and others? So, and with that noise, something to think about. So the idea is they're not going to put shovel in the ground until 2017. And why do we have to rush 1 month and just revisit it and look at it with a different pair of lens. And so, the next day, I met with Michael at his place. We walked around and I kind of sketched what I had in mind. And then I came over and talked to Adam and explained what I had in mind. And I think Joe and I talk periodically. So then nothing's been like, this is crazy administrator or alderman. But I think the idea is, if you why not buy 1 month? And I appreciated that Quick Trip wants to make a deal, and I appreciate people wanting to make a deal, but I appreciate that neighborhood too. So buy 1 month, see if we want to make any changes, and then go from there.
Well, I guess I appreciate your thoughts in it, and I've never designed a Quick Trip. You know, I'm assuming that their canopy normally faces the front of the store from all the stores I've ever been to. I guess my frustration in this is that we sit here for 2.5 hours, we have a discussion, we go through everything, we get people to come here and spend their time, and I'm back spending my time revisiting the exact same thing, when I think it's something the council should have figured out. We obviously approved it. I guess I just, as a younger member in this community, I get frustrated every time we try to have some progress and do something, and people may have different visions of project or process, moving forward, and I'm just frustrated by the situation. I just think, I think as a city, and maybe this isn't even the right place to say it, but I feel we have a tendency to push everything away, and in this situation, there could be way worse neighbors for that zoning than what Quick Trip. I mean, Quick Trip sat here and said, pretty much, whatever you want to do to make it right, let's do it. And I would just hate to see the opportunity for Quick Trip to walk away and then end up with, I mean, there could be a lot worse things in that backyard than a Quick Trip. That's my opinion. And I don't live there, and I have all the respect in the world of the people that live there. But when I look at that zoning and what it is, it could be 1,000,000 times worse than a Quick Trip. And I've, since our last meeting, I've driven out of my way to go to a few Quick Trips and look at them, and I've literally walked around them on the west side, out of town, wherever I've been. They're clean. They take pride in what they do. I truly think the employees take pride in what they do there. So I guess I just wanted to voice my displeasure in this coming back, and the fact that we're revisiting it, and I think it got pushed back onto us, and I don't think it needed to get pushed back onto us. And if I'm out of line for anything I say, feel free to say something to me, but.
If I had those concerns, who should it go to?
Well, we approved it, and isn't that,
Yeah.
as a council, aren't you supposed to figure that
Should
out?
we just rubber stamp it?
We
You know what I mean?
we set all our conditions in there, and I get that, but I
I'm
just
not-
think we're always pushing things away, and it's time to embrace people that want to come to Wisconsin Rapids. It's not, we don't have a lot of people knocking on our doors.
I agree with what you're saying. What I disagree with, if I disagree with you, I'm gonna vote no, not just because you did it. And then if you don't wanna go back, that's your problem. But I said at that meeting, I like the Quick Trip concept. You can listen on the tape or wherever. So, but I'm not gonna be rubber stamped to this council or a committee.
If I can just
Go ahead,
clarify
Adam,
real
please, yeah.
quick. I'm not trying to be a peacemaker or anything, but I think what the commission is getting at is there is a public hearing, and that's when the concerns and everything are brought up.
There.
And that is the appropriate time for all these concerns to be there. And the reason that's the appropriate time is that's when all the public is here as well. That's when the neighbors are here, and so that they can react to this. Because I can see situations where some of those things that you're presenting make sense. Some of them I can see actually angering the neighborhood more. For example, when they first submitted it, they had a car wash all the way on the east side. And the concern was, well, they'd be exiting right onto 6th Street, and all those blowers would actually be closer and facing more residential, for example. And so a lot of those things, the reason that the public hearing happens is, again, so that everyone is here and everyone can react to it. The neighbors can say, well, okay, maybe I actually like this idea better than the other one. And so by it not taking place at that meeting and then being sent back here, which is again not a formal public hearing, you're not getting the full spectrum of input and consideration on it. And so I don't know if that's interpreting where you're both coming, I agree with both of you, but I think it's gotta be done in a way that makes sense.
Right. And the council meeting, there's not a public hearing at the council meeting, correct? But it's my understanding there was a lot of opinions voiced at that council meeting? Okay.
So before I go off table, I've got a request over here to speak. I want to just want to make a quick comment before I go there in terms of what's the city's role in all of this, right? The only role the city has to play is to impose conditions which mitigate the health, safety, and welfare impacts that this development will proceed with, right? It's inappropriate for us to tell them certain things. And I would just say it's a slippery slope, just as to the council members in the room, to think about additional requirements that go beyond the scope of health, safety, and welfare, right? We wish, we like, we hope, those types of things, aspirational things, are inappropriate in terms of our role, the city's role, in issuing a conditional use for the development. So I just want to be very cautious about that, because it's a legal question, right? And so I don't want to open us up for any risk or liability in imposing conditions that are creep, beyond the health, safety, and welfare. So I just want to point that out, because I think it's important for members of the public that say, why can't you just tell them to do this? Well, no, there's ability and inability for us to tell them to do certain things. So I'll go off table now, and I'll
Well,
push
I
Dolan.
think I agree with what everybody just said, and I voted for this, to be honest with you, and I came to the public hearing a little late, I got my time screwed up, so I just had one really question, really. We talked about having another turn lane off of the expressway. Is that not on the table anymore? or-
what?
A turn lane off the expressway.
So the process with that, because
I recognize what he said about the traffic study.
Yeah, and that's-
I missed that last time. Was
Sure.
that said in the public hearing that we could still approve this without the traffic study? I didn't know that.
well, let's maybe
I mean,
clarify.
even though I voted yes.
Let's clarify steps in the process. It's not common for us to have a traffic impact study before a conditional use.
Okay.
Or a conditional use process is heard, right? So that's chicken and the egg here.
Yeah, yeah,
Fortunately,
okay,
we
yeah.
have it and we have the information, but it cannot cloud the decision about the conditional use. So I think it's a good question, because people are asking, where is it in the design? Well, the traffic impact analysis is nearly completed, and subsequent to this, normally the traffic impact analysis would follow this conditional use decision by the council. The money would never be spent on a traffic impact analysis until they knew the development was gonna happen. But Joe, if you wanna talk about process and even some of the pieces, components related to the
Right.
TIA.
What I was gonna mention is that typically, the conditional use permit would include perform a traffic impact analysis. And that's it. So, there have been a number of things called out in this conditional use proposal. And it does close by saying, once complete, the city, with joint review by Wisconsin DOT, will review the proposed changes to the traffic impact analysis and will determine if modifications are necessary to adequately handle proposed traffic. And that's the key. So our city engineer wasn't able to be here this evening, but really independent of this commission's decision, or I should say, the items in here, if there are other things that appear as part of the impact analysis that are concerns for safety and the well-being of the community, those will be addressed, appropriately.
Yes. No, I just wanted to bring that.
Right.
And the only other point I want to make is, and I said I agree with everybody, but I tend to agree with Mr. Burkhauser that we rely on commissions and committees, and believe me, they've turned down finance stuff, we've turned down finance stuff for two. This commission roundly passed a 6-0 after a public hearing. That's, in all honesty, that's why I voted yes, so.
Plus 18 conditions.
Plus
right?
18.
Yep.
Mr. Zerflu could sell this to a 24/7 restaurant and not have to even come to this committee.
Yep.
If we know our zoning laws and everything, so.
I want to go back to a point that the first part of your question, though, regarding turn lane or any other modifications in, let's say, to the intersection, right? So there's a point where the impact that Quick Trip will generate via their development, and there's also impact or operational issues in talking with the city engineer that currently exist there, many of which are south of the expressway, right? It's Daly, right? Daly, that really is problematic. And so we've already begun, and city engineer's been monitoring that. But as part of this development, let's say a year from now, something happens, or we discover that there are impacts now, partially because of this, partially because of what other, any other impact that might happen. There is a need, or there's a requirement of the developer to participate in that modification then at that point. Of course, they're not gonna pay for everything that's wrong there. It's not all they're, created by their impact. But Adam, do you wanna talk about process in terms of the development agreement and some of those things, just to clarify to the concern that's been raised?
Yeah, that a development agreement is probably the best way to summarize it. It's the traffic impact analysis. It's designed to say, okay, here's the impact, and then what are the potential solutions to that? Recognizing the fact that there are 3 other corners that are already developed, and there is a certain responsibility on whether it's the city or those existing corners that they are taking on some of the burden on the issues that are created. The standard practice is that a development agreement would then be put together that would go through and say, here's what needs to be done to either maintain the existing level of service, if the existing level of service is appropriate, or to improve the level of service if the current level of service is not appropriate. And then it goes through and says, to do so, we're going to do A, B, and C, and then it assigns responsibility. So A, B, and C are responsibility of the city, for example. D is responsibility of Quick Trip, and then here's the timing and here's the cost. And then that would outline all those type of things that would be recommended by staff to the Public Works Committee, and then the committee would then bring it to the council. So I know, Alderman Kellogg, you didn't like the word negotiate because you probably, a lot of people assume if you're negotiating with the developer, the city's getting the short shift sometimes, and there are definitely developers out there who do that. But negotiate is out there because, again, all those items are moving pieces. What's that existing level of service? What are we trying to get to? What's the timing and everything else?
Okay.
So again, that's what a development agreement is for. And rather than specifically stating a development agreement, we phrased it that they have to work with engineering on what those recommendations come out of the traffic impact study. It's saying the same thing. And again, that would come back through, that would go through the proper city committee, and then that would go to the city council.
Say level of responsibility is the key understanding, that there will be levels of responsibility by all parties, and that's what we talked about with each respective corner and, I guess, property owner there.
I mean, just if I can,
Mhm.
just quickly, I mean, the hospital has been brought up. That's another example of something where they were likely gonna have to go through some sort of zoning approval for any of their expansions. And it would be the same question. It will be at this intersection, and it'll be at the existing intersection of, what is that, Third and the expressway, and we just get that mixed up. So, again, that would be a standard process. You're not necessarily requiring that up front, but knowing that there will be impact, you're gonna come back and with that development agreement specific to traffic impact.
And at the same time, I would just say, because arbitrarily, some of us that drive that and think me included, know everything, we're gonna put a turn lane there because we think it's best. Well, I think we have to trust engineering and trust the impact analysis that's going to occur, because it may, as the engineer indicated last Friday, there may be some no-build opportunities there with signaling and some other timing of that intersection, really to help it operate to a level of service that doesn't fail, in effect by definition. So I think those are all pieces that, we're not approving something as is today, living with it for the rest of our lives. It's approving something and then continuing to monitor it between now and then. I do want to address the time frame, though, that was raised, Scott, in terms of another month. And speaking with Hans in co-ownership of the development, that another month indicates a 2017 or 2018 development. So it's not that they can just move it another month. Without the conditional use, they can't budget for the development next year. So I think we're living within, do we want it, is it gonna happen here by them at all in 17, or maybe never? So I guess that's the concern about another month. Once this process is completed, then that extra massaging and discussion and negotiating occurs to ultimately get to a point where the development works, with certain conditions. So I think those are the end of my comments. Thanks for the clarification on the right turn lane. Alderperson Stack, you've got another question?
Just that, right turn lane is a make or break for me. Okay? I stated it on the council floor. I've stated here to the folks from Quick Trip. Any of us who have traveled that realize that, kind of like the phone company. I worked at the phone company for over 30 years. And what you have is you have a busy hour. Busy hour meaning that you need, your switch is built for the busy hour. which means it's over capacity for normal hours. And that's what I see here. Quick Trip will add traffic to that corner. I appreciate their wanting to come in and do this. I have nothing against them for doing that. But why wait to put in a turning lane? Why not do it now? The cost associated with it would be lower than perhaps a few years down the road, based on the idea that everything kind of goes up in price. It's done and out of the way. And any of us here who have been through that intersection of busy hours on occasion have seen even trucks racing on the expressway in the sense to beat that yellow light. All right? So, as an alderman and a member of the city council, I don't, there's been accidents here, I realize that. But I don't want one to be a serious accident because we could have alleviated it beforehand. That would be to put in that right turn lane. I equate it with, as you come east across the expressway bridge and you're turning south on First Street, you have that little lane that you can move over into. It might take 3 or 4 cars perhaps, but that's still for the people who are going through the intersection. That takes those 3 or 4 cars out of the intersection for those through traffic. That's why I'd like to see this here. And to all that you have said, I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying we can do it now and be done with it and not have to come back and revisit it, is what you're saying. You're saying, well, we'll revisit it. So I'm afraid this is simply a make and break, and you'll probably have the votes on the council, but it's make or break for me.
I think you should re-explain the process again.
Yeah,
So
so,
I heard the process.
We know the process.
but I think one of the key items here is that
can't-
a lot of us, even myself included, you know, I'm a civil engineer, I'm not an expert in traffic intersection analysis.
Right.
And so what the city has required is Quick Trip hire experts in traffic intersection analysis to ascertain the existing and the proposed level of service at those intersections.
Understand
And so,
that. There's-
it would really be.
Joe, there's no question in my mind.
Right.
I know
So-
what you want to do.
So
Okay?
what I'm suggesting is that for anyone to say, we need a turn lane here, or we need something there, none of us in this room are traffic experts.
But sometimes you don't have to be an expert on something. Sometimes things bite you in the butt, just like common sense.
You think more people are gonna turn there than turn on First Street?
I'm not sure what
To,
you're-
to
Coming
like
across
Joe
the
just
expressway,
said,
turn on
I'm
First
also a civil engineer, and I think it's inappropriate of people who are not experts in this field. I mean, we're not saying we're not gonna do it, it's just approving it now so it can be deferred and looked at under higher scrutiny by people who are educated in this field and do this day in and day out, and not some hunch that you need a turning lane there.
And trust their judgment.
Yeah. I'm a
I hear
professional
you.
engineer, and people defer their judgment to me all the time, and I would even say this needs to go to a different expert.
That's fine. That's your opinion. Isn't it?
So Jim,
That's your opinion.
so Jim, while I won't disagree with you that I think ultimately there may be a turn lane that
I
comes as a
know.
part of a recommendation, it's inappropriate for the commission to demand Quick Trip to put this in as part of their development without the level of scrutiny and expertise that has to be placed on the development. So I think subsequent to this, it's our engineering recommendation or condition in the conditional use that they will perform this analysis, and there must be
Right.
negotiation about what improvements build, meaning a turn lane or no build, like turn arrows and things, to get that issue remedied. And I think that's what's in the conditional use. So I think we cannot impose a right turn lane just like we can impose, I don't know, pick another example on this development at this stage at the planning commission level. Nor can we at a council level deny a conditional use permit because they didn't put in a turn lane. You know, that's complete, that would just open us up to major liability issues. So I think, I guess, I don't know, does anybody, staff, have any additional comments to the questions, or I think we've hammered it?
Really, let's not waste any more time on my concern. Move on. Okay, it's been said enough. you
And I
know?
think you understand the
Oh, I
position
understand.
and process.
I
Yeah.
understand it
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, good.
No problem
So are
there.
you saying he's liable if he tells you how he's voting because you didn't put that turn lane in? Well, I want to clarify that because I asked a simple question. I know you're an engineer. I just asked a simple question. Do you think more people turn on First Street than they're going to turn into that Quick Trip? I'm for the Quick Trip.
I would answer that with, I need to take a look at traffic counts before I offer
Sure.
any type of a professional recommendation or opinion.
Hence the need to analyze each turning
So how
movement of
soon
all
are
the
these counts
demand.
going to be done?
If you're asking the difference between Lincoln and First,
No,
Just Lincoln.
just Lincoln right now.
it's underway, and I would expect that, you know, if a conditional use is passed, the quicker those, that information is returned to the city engineers, the quicker recommendations will be processed and negotiation take place. But I wouldn't expect, in fact, I'll go on record saying I'm surprised that Quick Trip has supplied as much information as they already have, because the condition upon approval, before they can get their permits, is that they supply a traffic impact analysis. They've done so far without any guarantees. And so I think there's certainly effort and good faith there. There are a number of items that have been submitted that are being questioned by the engineering department, scrutinized fairly heavily. And I continue to expect that there'll be plenty of conversation regarding traffic, if the conditional use is approved. Because that's our job, that's our goal is traffic safety, and we take it very seriously.
And to
Certainly
this
hear you.
gentleman here, I don't know you. My name is Jim Stack,
Hi,
Burkhauser.
Tim Burkhauser.
Okay, your brother works for the phone company?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I'm not, because I'm an old man, doesn't mean I'm against something new coming in. The thing is, with age comes wisdom and experience, okay? I sat in on a meeting one time. The guy looked at me and said, "Jim, what's the difference between you and the guys up front, including your brother?" I said, "Young and dumb, old and smart." And that includes
Well, and I
Graham
appreciate,
Sampson.
and I appreciate that,
So,
but I had
just
nothing
be
to do with,
sure.
I had nothing to do with your age in this.
No,
And
I know
and
you
I don't agree to be referred to as young and dumb, so I appreciate that, I think we'll move forward.
Yeah,
The last thing I
okay.
wanna say is, I wanna say thank you to Quick Trip for coming back and putting up with all of this. I drove by the properties today, one of the properties that house there, we can all agree is rough. The last thing we wanna see is another building sitting empty, with the dance studio and all those things. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to any of the council members or anything like that. I voiced my opinion, you have your opinion.
That's right.
I would put on record, I don't think I'm young and dumb, but I appreciate that.
All right,
Can you put that on record?
we've got Alderperson Furkey has, not the secretary, I'm the chairperson. Alderperson Furkey, and then we'll go off the table after the commissioner.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the rezoning of parcel 34-07914 from M1 zone to B2.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Furkey, second by Rosecrans. Any further discussion by the commission? See no further discussion, I guess, Mike, did you have a comment? We've got a motion on the floor.
Yes, if I may, a couple of things I just want to quickly point out. One, can you put the back up one? Thank you. Last thing I want to do is touch it, I don't really screw it up.
Might fall off the wall.
I fell asleep.
Fell asleep. Multiple connotations.
The neighbors on this section here with these garages, I've only talked to this gentleman, Mr. Mason, and the realtor that has this one. Mr. Mason has his house up for sale. I talked to him again today. The only reason he has it up for sale, he has a handicapped daughter that has some, I think it's back issues, and their bedrooms are on the second floor.
She's Down
They want to
syndrome.
buy a ranch.
She's Down syndrome.
It's irrelevant to the
And
conversation,
so,
Marlene.
these neighbors, which makes sense, are all in favor of it, because this is a mess right now with the easement stuff, and this is gonna be so much better for them. And, no, in fairness, the one over here, I don't believe I've talked to yet, but to me, it's just common sense that they'd be in favor of that. My concerns are, and Mr. Kellogg, you asked what should be done. Again, I've never been on a council or anything like that. In my opinion, you have the experts that you're paying here, Adam, Joe, I'm sorry, your name again? Shane.
well, not
Shane's a
take it from
commissioner.
here. I'm a
Okay,
commission
but-
member.
Okay, you're a commission member and you're a civil engineer, you said, right?
Yes.
So you have these experts, and to me, what I thought should have been done is, if anything, one, ask questions of the experts that were there, because correct me if I'm wrong, you guys had a half a dozen or more different plans for this, correct? Even, I know one time with you folks, they changed this, they had 2 exits here. I don't want to touch this, Adam, but they
Mike-
had another exit here
Mike,
and.
point of order, Mike, we're not gonna go backwards and
Okay.
talk about all, make your point, please, because we've got
Just
a motion in the
the
second.
point is for all developments, okay?
Yeah.
The point is for all developments, being involved over the years with a city, it's frustrating for a guy that's buying land or selling it. And in my opinion, to say, how can we help make this happen? So at that, instead of making a motion to table this or send it back, to say, okay, is there somebody here from the city that can answer these questions for me? You know, you mentioned a different plan, wasn't there quite a few plans done, Adam? You know, so they could have answered those questions, Joe Terry answered those questions regarding this traffic thing. I don't have a problem with a right turn lane, but if I'm Quick Trip, I'm assuming I don't want to pay for it because the traffic's already there. That's why they buy it as a busy location. And to me, it's anytime you have somebody that wants to develop, forget that it's Quick Trip, how can we make this work instead of putting hurdles up for them? Because that's what it feels like to me. There's always hurdles. And I understand, I respect both Mr. Stack, your concern and your concern, but these guys are the experts. Adam, you and I talked today about the traffic study. I wouldn't know what one if it was sitting in front of me, and I certainly wouldn't know how to interpret it. That's what you guys are for. And I think any developer, you gotta say, wow, how can we make this work for them? I get it, no neighbor wants to have that in their backyard, but it is zone commercial. So that's all I'm saying, to try to, any developer, we want to work with them to make this town grow instead of digress.
Got a motion, a second. Any further discussion by the commission? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, 6-0. Moving to item 4, action on Plan 160206, Quick Trip rezoning from R2 B2 to B2, on parcel 3407922. Similar note to the previous item. Commissioners, what are your wishes regarding item 4?
Motion to approve that.
Motion by
Second.
Burkhart, second by Burkhauser. Any further discussion on the motion to approve? Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried, 6-0. Ayes have it. Item 5, action on Plan 160207, Quick Trip Incorporated, conditional use to allow an automobile service station and an animated sign on parcels 3407922, 21, 20, 19, and 14. Please note this item was also sent back to City Council at the May 17th meeting. Previously, the commission approved it 6-0. Commissioners, what are your wishes regarding number 5?
Motion to
So-
approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Burkhauser, second by Rosecrans. Discussion?
That's with all of the stipulations that were, okay.
And I would only ask Adam, if you've had any additional discussion with anybody in terms of, the developer or any other property owners that may have indicated a need to change or impose additional conditions since time has passed.
There has been some communication with the neighbors since the last meeting and city council. For the most part, those concerns, and correct me if I'm wrong, have been associated with basically 3 things. One was in lighting, making sure that the lighting does in fact meet the condition that it can't bleed over the property line more than 0.5-foot candles. There's been the concern or the question with the landscaping screening along 6th Street South. Originally, the commission had supported the concept of a landscape berm there to try and block that out. The neighbors that I have spoken with are indicating that they would prefer a fence with along 6th Street as opposed to a landscape berm, more for the year-round screening than anything. And so the revised plan submitted by Quick Trip actually shows that, which is different than what condition, I think it would be condition number 13 would be, which was calling for the landscape berm. And then the last thing that I guess hasn't necessarily been addressed, or I guess I'm not comfortable with the condition on it, is this noise from the car wash, on whether or not there should be some sort of sound study for the noise that comes off the car wash. Me personally, from my perspective, the fact that it's been, the car wash has been shifted and the blowers have been, which are the noisiest part of the car wash, have been moved away from the residential and are facing the expressway. I'm personally comfortable with it, but that's me as the planner, not necessarily the neighbors. So Those have been the three main concerns that I have heard since the previous meeting. So I guess if I'm, any recommendation, it would be to specifically note that fence along Sixth Street is an alternative that is acceptable versus berm and landscaping.
Commissioners, any comments on the conditions that have been imposed?
Going back to the discrepancy of the height of the fence, that's a black and white issue, isn't it, in our zoning? We revisited fencing, so this one will have a set height for it, so, am I correct, Adam, that we?
It says minimum of 6 feet, so
Minimum.
if the commission would prefer to require an 8 foot, you could make that change.
Okay.
Commissioners, anybody else? Sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
No.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments on a public hearing? I'd remind, but certainly anybody has the right to speak.
Is that what Mr. Kellogg's gonna want, as an 8 foot? I mean,
Well,
I'd rather get this solved now.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not.
I'd go 8.
I go 8 on the east side, at the east end, because if you go 6 feet, me being 6 feet, and thinking of teenagers and high school kids, and if you go 8 feet, I think it'd be a lot more practical that they won't jump it and have problems, so at least,
Walk around the fence.
at least over
You
here.
gotta just walk around and do, I guess.
Here, you got 6 foot, you got those
You wanna be able to
trees,
get in there.
right? But here, if you go 8 foot,
Is Quick Trip willing to do an 8-foot fence?
I mean, obviously, it costs a lot more than an 8-foot fence, but if that's the will of the
well,
commission.
I'm just throwing, forget it.
I mean, one thought, I mean, obviously neighbors, obviously that being the south lot line, the taller the fence, the less sunlight you're gonna get in there and everything. So I guess that's a little trade-off between, those trees are designed to be 10 foot when they're planted. So, just a consideration factor there.
So make it
I mean,
6.
I don't know if Adam has thoughts on the height of fence and with that amount of fencing, what it might look like with that size of fence. That's an aesthetic consideration, I guess.
About the only place I've seen it in town where it would be even comparable would be on the expressway. You have an 8 foot fence along the expressway.
Yeah.
And whether or not, what your feelings are on how that looks versus in a more residential area.
Not to open up more cans of worms, but if a residential person could not put up a 8-foot fence, we're limited at 6 feet, right? And it's adjacent to pure residence.
Well, there's an exception in the code that allows an 8 foot if you are adjacent to commercial.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that because I know we revisited fencing extensively and that we're not just being wishy-washy on things.
Yeah, no, you have the ability to require an 8 foot, and
Okay.
it would be consistent with your code. if
Joe,
that's the concern.
my only comment was fence along Sixth Street, if that landscaping was to be replaced with a fence, I think an 8-foot fence aesthetically would not be pleasing along the street. It'd be one thing if it was something that had to be done on the north, that north fence line, but on the east side of the property, I think it would be, wouldn't fit the neighborhood very well.
I tend to agree.
Right,
Mr.
and
Fricke?
the reason for the fence wasn't for the sound, it was for headlights leaving at night for the property owners on Sixth Street. I would make it uniform and keep it at 6 foot. The reason, again, for the sound to the north, the sound is not gonna go up and over as much as, you might think. Otherwise, we'd have 14-foot tall fences. Aesthetically, I think the 6-foot fence with the landscaping is adequate.
Isn't that fence almost an obstruction?
I'm thinking it becomes more of an an eyesore or something,
right.
it's more, your eye gets attracted to it more than the natural landscaping, but I understand the need for the fence, and I'm not disputing that.
Sure.
I agree with the fence. Any other comments by anybody?
My just concern is, what is Mr. Kellogg gonna feel comfortable with? I
Well,
mean,
why, you don't,
Well, I'm.
wait, I brought up the fence initially when it was asked, what were the concerns? It makes sense to me, everything what everybody's saying, I'm saying, whoa, yeah, sounds good. So I'm sitting here trying to,
And I agree with you on the fence. I think we're all in agreement with the fence.
Yeah.
I think we want to just make sure when we leave this meeting, if we approve a 6-foot fence, that it doesn't go to the council and they say,
I
we want an
agree.
8-foot fence.
How's that?
So what do we want to do?
When they go to the council,
There.
2 weeks, we won't forget in 2 weeks, but if it comes next.
So what do we want to do?
6
Are you- 6 feet.
I don't know why we're not putting arborvitaes on that. Why are we putting arborvitaes? There's 30 foot in my backyard and you don't see nothing from the neighbors. They don't fall down in the winter either.
That's along the north. Okay.
All right, 6-foot fence.
Six. Color of the fence? Just kidding.
Yeah.
Anything further from anybody?
Just, is there other issues that Mr. Stack or Mr. Cullen can have satisfied now that can hopefully, where you'd support this when it comes to the
I
vote?
can support this totally.
Excellent.
And I won't have any problem with it. I think you're ahead of it if you do the right lane now. And that could be a combination of Quick Trip, city, and state.
Okay.
And I know nobody wants to spend money, so each one will say no. But, you know, I do, you know, I have no grudge against Quick Trip. I think you'll be a good addition there, okay? Understand that. It's just that one of the things that occurs there, which you don't see because you're not here, there are periods of time when that becomes a very busy intersection. And I don't want to know that an accident occurred when we could have prevented it. That's all. But as for your project, good. I wish you well.
May I make one other comment?
Sure.
Just briefly, I don't know if it was with you, Joe, or with Quick Trip, but somebody made the comment, maybe it was you, Mr. Stack, when we met. Quick Trip, the last thing they want to do is open up for business, let's say May 1st, 2017, and then all of a sudden have that intersection closed for 6 months for being redone to stop people from going in. I mean, they want to have the business going really good. Maybe it was you that said that's why they do the traffic study ahead of time, so this stuff can be done before they open for business, correct?
It's in everybody's best interest.
Yes, okay.
So,
Alderperson Furkey.
We don't have a right turn lane on West Grand for the Quick Trip there. We don't
No,
have
we
a right
don't.
turn lane on East Street for the Quick Trip there.
I realize that.
I don't,
But you
anyway.
see, there's a school there, okay? On West Grand Avenue, it's business. There's a school when you go up Lincoln a little bit. There's two schools, in fact. There's Assumption and there's the East Junior High, all right? So that's why I would like to see that there. Now, I'm not gonna get a heart attack again off of you.
Okay.
You did that last time.
Sorry about that.
We have a motion and a
At least it wasn't
second.
my fault.
We'll move into a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes unanimously. Move into item, thank you all for your input.
Quick Trip's done then?
We are moving on to item 6, which would be on another item.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. Item 6, public hearing on Plan 160360. Nobody wants to hang on to this one? Planning and Economic Development. The applicant is requesting an amendment to Chapter 11 zoning of the municipal code to clarify regulations pertaining to portable storage containers. Adam, what do you want from us?
Well, I know I'm putting you all through an exciting time with the entire zoning code rewrite process, but there is one item that we are beginning to see pop up, and frankly, I want to know what the commission and what the council feels about these and how we should regulate them, if we should regulate them at all. And these are, they're commonly known as self-storage containers, and there's a picture of it in my brief description. Pods is probably the most well-known company on them. Currently under our ordinance, if it's got 4 walls and a roof, it's a structure. This technically is that. It technically would then need a permit, but is it really appropriate to regulate it like a structure and then having setbacks? Some are used temporary as they are intended, others are popping up where people are using them basically as a long-term shed environment. So it's a question of how does the city want to regulate these? So I asked our zoning consultant what is done in other communities they've worked with and what their recommendation probably would be in the zoning ordinance rewrite, and that's the language that is proposed to be submitted for your consideration. Basically what it boils down to is that we're recommending that they be treated as a temporary use, so it can be in any district. It is intended to be if you are doing, if you're moving, if you're remodeling, basically on a temporary basis that you can store your items there rather than having to rent a self-storage unit or something else like that. but it is not a long-term thing. So it's basically saying that it should not be on a parcel for more than 90 days during a 9-month period. And then obviously if there are outstanding circumstances, we would consider trying to be flexible with people. The one question is whether or not we think it should be done by permit. At this point, we're basically recommending that we not require a permit. Number one, it would be an additional cost on a property owner. Number two, it's most likely that 9 out of 10 of these are gonna pop up and go away without any issues. And if there is one that's of concern when it's brought to our attention, we would start the 90-day clock at that time. And if not, we would just monitor it that way rather than requiring it out front. So our recommendation is to add language to regulate these. That language is found before you. And then just looking for what the commission and the council feel.
Commissioners.
I just have a question. Those darn things, 90 days, if that's put in there in June, that still gives all summer for rabbits and chipmunks and everything out to grow to those things coming. I have them, I see them. I mean, there's space underneath them, isn't there?
Yeah, they're made to obviously be able to be picked up and
Definitely.
relocated.
I know, and
Yes,
there's a
not-
lot of animals that live under there, and the city's got enough of them in it right now in town. That's my own opinion. I agree.
90 days is a
that-
long time.
I think it is, especially if, like I just said, if it's there all summer, there's gonna be a lot of breeding going on.
Intent is a lot different if it's 90 days than if it were for purely a
Right.
transitional or piece. I think that, Alderperson Perky?
So without a permit, who's keeping track of the 90 days?
Well, it would be our ordinance officer, so if he notices one, he'll take note of when it is out there. If we get a complaint on one, someone says it's been there, then we would know the date, and then we would start the clock from there.
Is this,
So they may end up getting 120 days versus 90 days because of monitoring it that way.
has this been a known or a recorded issue that we're having in the city right now, or is this preventative maintenance?
We are getting complaints on them
Okay.
currently. It's not huge, we're talking probably 3 or 4 neighbors have concerns with ones that have popped up, and those are ones that have popped up and they are not moving. They've been there
Yeah.
for 6 months or more, so it's clearly not a temporary situation.
Joe, you got a comment?
Yeah, just without having I didn't see a specific setback requirement. I do have a safety concern about that, both from a traffic standpoint, privacy, neighborhood aesthetics, that that we at least somehow, and that's where I have some trouble, because if there's good reason for putting it in the driveway right next to the sidewalk, maybe because there's no room or whatever, if it's permitted, then consideration can be given based on the amount of time, staff feels that it's reasonable, that.
I see your point.
Good point.
What if they drop it on utilities in 9 months? You're in there and you're like, or I mean 6 months, or what are we at, 3 months? That 90 days. Utility problem. You got to get in there and it's a problem. He's in the way.
Right.
Or underneath the garage, that's too close to property line, that'd be a setback. You would be able to do that.
Yeah, the
Okay.
location, it says it can't be in a
Yep.
front or a side
Okay.
setback.
Okay, gotta read.
Unless it's in a driveway.
Sorry, Joe.
So,
Right, and so, in the driveway, I'm, even like this picture here that we see is the example, the car is parked in the right of way. Granted, there's no sidewalk there, but it is in that safety buffer, it is, and so I do have some concerns about a setback, or at least something so that we might be able to prevent something like that. That said, if it is truly for temporary use and people are in and out of there, I hate to regulate any more than we have to, and certainly permitting for the amount of revenue that it generates, it costs more in administration. So, I suggest we proceed cautiously, but I just wanted to note that from a safety standpoint, that if those things are parked and you get a situation like that, that car is not in a good spot.
But that's a car, not the storage. Is the storage acceptable to you? Where
Well, the
it's
storage,
placed?
looks like it's parked on private property. It looks like, looks like it's not in the public right of way.
Just barely.
It's in a good, it's an acceptable location. The pot. The pot.
Right, right.
In this case, it happens to be the car that's the interference.
Right.
And we have other things that would regulate
Okay.
or be moved, because you can't technically block a driveway or sidewalks.
Well, and as
or
long
things
as
like
too, that there's an understanding that, you know, it is not to occupy the right of way. And if there isn't sidewalk there, you know, that's 15 feet or more from the curbs. It's not exactly obvious in a lot of places within the city where the right of way is.
Is it right of way 10 feet in residential area?
Depends on the width of the street.
Okay.
I mean, if it may not hurt to put location in here and specifically state it cannot be located within the right of way as well, just, but
Yeah,
that's
and
only
that
gonna
would
help
be-
if someone comes and asks the question.
And that would be redundant
But-
because we already have an ordinance that says you can't occupy a right of way. But,
But at least it reiterates it and it's in writing, so if it ever becomes an issue in the future, then they say, I didn't know. Well, it was here.
Well, and if we want to do some educational and put these in Pod's hands and Stokar's hands and whoever else that does these, we want it to be concise. And I think
Yeah.
giving some parameters and not having a permit is a good happy medium that I can live with. I don't like the idea of permitting it, even though, you know, there's a risk in that, but I think being a bit of proactive on it. I do struggle 90 days. I'm tempted to do 60 or 45 even. I don't know, that's just my own two cents.
Yeah, the 90 days is more for the renovation type of project versus a moving project. If you're going to gut your entire kitchen, I guess is why there's probably a longer time period on there, but if you're more comfortable doing less, even if you require that they request an extension or something along that lines, to get up to 90 days. But
I just think.
again, that's why I'm bringing it here.
It's
'cause
the
what
few
you guys-
percentage of ones you've got problems with today, and I think those are the residents that have to live with them today, and they're a nuisance, and they're yet another 90-day time frame to leave them there. I just, you know, it doesn't sit too well with another 3 months, looking at that thing when it's been there for a year. I don't like that idea too much.
My opinion is gonna get abused, so that's,
Certainly it will. And the reason the vehicle is behind the pod here is because the other vehicle's in the garage and needs an avenue to get out to the street. Now with this vehicle parked here, look at the safety factor backing out of that driveway too. So, I'm more with Joe saying, make sure that it's off the right of way. I certainly would be happier with a shorter time frame than 90 days because, you know, Ray Starks is on the ball all the time here, but things get lost. And a lot of times they don't get found until we get the phone calls to remind others. So,
Okay.
Go ahead, Shane.
It's too far out, but I mean, something of, you know, would there be a permit then of what date was it delivered, you know, or, I mean, the other thing is, you can ask the people, it's a rented thing.
Right.
So you can say, when did this show up? And that gives you when it was, so it's not the 90-day, you know,
When it's been discovered.
when you discuss it.
Yeah, as long as we can document that it's been there that time period, right, we don't have to start the clock.
Yeah.
Right.
if we had a requirement that it be set 30 foot off the curb, that would accommodate most typical cars and would essentially, you know, it can't be in the right of way anyway, but at least 30 feet behind the curb would keep it back far enough where you wouldn't have those type of parking issues, independent of the roadway width.
I would say that may be, I'm all in agreement, I would love to see that, but that may be difficult considering some people's driveways and properties and, you
Some of the
know,
older neighborhoods that don't have the setbacks that
you know,
really struggle.
we may run into.
So in
an
those
issue
cases, would it be appropriate that if you can't meet the conditions, then it's permitted as a temporary structure? Were there special circumstances?
Can they
or-
do that today, Adam? I mean, it's not a temporary structure.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the entire temporary structure section there, and it basically only applies to commercial uses, really. It's how our current temporary structure situation is. It says it can't be in a residential district, so. Yes, we don't have anything.
I'm inclined to take that first step and adopt something like this and monitor its performance, and if it doesn't work, we make our tweaks. I think adding the right-of-way piece accounts for a bit of that, maybe not entirely, but then that would be under what location, Adam?
Yeah.
NC. Are there any other, Alder Severke?
Right, rather than permitting, if that is not cost effective, is there a way that we could require a date, like a building permit in a clear sleeve that's attached to the pod with a date on it, when it was
Oh, delivery.
set? So rather than people scratching their heads saying, I think it was delivered in April, you know, have it almost like a building permit, but although it wouldn't be a permit, it'd be something that Storco or whoever has to supply when they set it down.
Almost a
And have
receipt
it on
delivery,
the,
yeah.
facing the street if it's in the driveway. Is that,
Or must be available
Unreasonable.
upon request.
We can put it in there, and if they have it or not, then it's one of those things of, well, this was the ordinance, you know, they're gonna be able to figure out what it is, because they're paying for it.
Adam, any idea on how you wanna accommodate that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the actual, I mean, if the ones that are gonna be an issue, I guess, the likelihood of them putting up something on the outside of it, it's always, the ones that weren't gonna be an issue would be willing to do that and would have no problem putting a little placard up. The ones that are gonna be an issue aren't gonna do it anyway, I guess is kind of where I'm.
but that's the one we want to monitor,
Right.
right?
Right, but I think we still would be able to contact whatever company put it there and get an actual date.
Oh,
Ray's gonna make these connections relative, or whoever's in that position would be able to make those connections relatively quick. Call, give an address, and get a date of delivery. I think that's, it puts a little more on the city, but I think that's an easier way to enforce it than something on the, but that's my initial feedback. I may come back in a month and be like, we need something on the exterior. I reserve the right to change my mind.
But like the mayor said, we're starting with something, and if it doesn't work, I mean, we change it.
Yeah, 3 months from council meeting if it's not working. I mean, does anybody else share a concern about the 90 days? I mean, I hear on the one hand that, remodel projects may take 3 months, but at the same time, people gotta live with that thing in their neighborhood for 3 months too. When people do remodels, they don't always throw a trailer out front of their house to,
I would suggest 60 days personally.
We have a recommendation for, we don't have to amend it, Adam, it's just a proposed update, but is there consensus around 60 days? Yes?
Just a comment, 45, an extension for another 45, was another thought. They have 45 days and then come back in easily.
I think you rent them in 30-day intervals.
Oh, okay.
I think, I made my mom call on one the other day,
Oh,
so I
okay.
think I asked her how long they charge for it. I think it is 30-day.
So the minimum
Yeah,
is
I'm
30.
pretty sure.
Okay.
We could go with a 60-day with the possible extension of 30 days.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, even if you did with a valid building permit or something, a 30-day extension could be granted, so that there's some sort of proof. It's not just me asking for it.
Mhm.
You have the project.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
so there's your
acceptable.
exception of project development or, people doing projects, yeah.
I'll help you find building permits that people didn't pull.
That's what, this is probably Ray's big, or the building code inspector's #1 indication, probably, like many others.
That and property pin locates. I'm
Oh, there you go,
surprised.
there you go. Okay, anything further, so we landed on 60 with a 30-day extension with proof of building permit, right, as a reason to grant the extension?
As a point of order,
Yep.
are we still in public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, thank you, yeah. Public hearing, anyone else wishing to speak on, for or against the proposed update on the zoning code? With that, I'll close.
I'm
the
against
vote.
it, but that'll show in my vote.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing, we'll move into item 7, which is action on Plan 160360, Planning and Economic Development, amendment to Chapter 11 pertaining to portable storage containers. Thank you for the clarification there, Joe. So we've now accounted for some of the comments based on our discussion. Are there any further considerations, amendments, I guess, to the proposed update to the zoning code? Seeing none, I'd entertain a vote as it pertains to the way it stands. Anyone wishing to make that motion?
I'll motion for it.
Motion by Burkhart, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Burkhauser. Any further discussion?
And if I can, Kelly, am I correct in understanding you're against it because you don't want them anywhere? It's not
I
that
am,
you don't
truthfully,
necessarily like.
I think the thing, I know we have ordinance officer, I just think it's gonna be abused, and it'll pass, but I've been around them things and so.
Good point.
So the motion is to amend chapter 11, pertaining to portable storage containers as proposed, with a shorter time period, or with a time period of 60 days, with a 30-day extension with a valid building permit.
And then to include right-of-way in the location in item C.
Okay.
Those would be the two that I heard. Are there additional?
Yeah, that was in my mind, the right of way and then the 60 plus 30.
Perfect. Your mind as well on the second? Yep. All right. So we've got those accounted for. Anything further, commissioners? Moving to a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. Opposed?
No. Motion carried, 5-1. That passes. Thank you for the discussion on that. Let's move into item 8, adjournment.
So moved.
We have a motion by Rosecrans. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Perky. I'll give it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Stand adjourned. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.